This video is about prepping the sailing kayak Nomad for an upcoming trip to the Florida Keys. It's a happy thought here in the middle of winter and a big snowstorm right now. Less than a month away, we should be getting on the road for a trip just made for this boat. The fins and spars hadn't had attention, some pieces, for 12 years or so since launch. So it's a chance to go through those, a little bit more detail about how they're put together in case you're interested in that, and overall just looking forward to heading down south out into the green water with Sailing Kayak Nomad. Hope you enjoy the video.
You've been taken by the wind. I'm no closer sound. Doors that would not let you in. Outcast and a stranger. You have come by grace. You have come.
It's a very cold late January day here. I want to start thinking about getting on the water again. And what's coming next is we're gonna take the Sailing Kayak Nomad down to the Florida Keys again. So got a couple of prep items. I can't get the boat down yet because my wife seems to feel that a garage is for cars, whereas everybody knows it's really for boats. But during the cold, frosty months, the car's in here. But what I can do, I need to do some things for the spars, give them some love, and I go over especially the rudder mechanism. Spars for Nomad stay up on top of the thistle masts that I had for the first boat I made, Cosmo. The rig for Nomad. For the first task, I'd like to spread the rig out, and it's mighty cold, so I don't think I'm going to take it down to the basement. What it has to do with is the attach point for the sprit seems to be binding, making it hard to get the sail up and down easily, which is not a good thing. Kitties. Oh, that's the reefing line, not your towway. I think there's two problems I'm going to try to address. Maybe I can. Whoops.
Are you filming?
Yeah. We'll talk about the problems later. Leave my wife in peace. I think it's safe to come back and resume. So yeah, two problems I think I'd like to tackle that are causing the contact point from the sprit to bind up a little bit. The one I'd been pursuing, I actually worked on it with my Swiss Army knife while we were up in Lake Superior Shore, is the angle of the bracket holding that piece of PVC. Not quite correct, but I think maybe there's more to it. I think that unlike the other PVCs, which can flex a little bit on and off the mast, this guy's held by a bracket. And I may need to open up the angle of that bracket just slightly. So I'm gonna lay it out on the floor, eyeball that, and see what we want to try to do. Sail hasn't been down here for 12 years since I first got it, and initially did the bend onto the boom. So these brackets were my third attempt to to get this sail to hang right. But they've held up okay. It's a little stiffer. And I thought maybe the angle was also a problem. I mean, it's slightly, a little bit more of a gap below. Quantify that a little bit. I guess basically got less than an eighth, probably 3/32 differential there. I talked a little bit about the design ideas when I drew the plan for this sail on a video that I'll put a link to in the description. But I've done now 3 sails where I've drawn the sail plan myself and then contracted it to Duckworks. Found them on the internet and they're great. Small boat oriented, very helpful, and very competent in their sailmaker. I've learned the hard way there's really not going to be a whole lot of magic about how the thing actually sits. There's not going to be the ability, for example, for the sail to not crease if there's anything more than maybe a 1/4 inch off. For example, this did not work. I thought I would put a batten in this sleeve. The downward force is not symmetrically aligned along that line. So there were 2 problems with that. First of all, it caused a big crease from this corner out, which I guess you could call the peak if this were gaff rigged, but it's not really gaff rigged, so I don't know, I'll call it the peak. From the peak down here, there was a big crease. And then the other problem was with the pressure forward, the downward force translating into forward pressure in that batten pocket, it would rotate around to one side or the other. And now you no longer have a straight luff line, and so that was a problem as well. I eventually realized I needed to move the angle down and create some kind of a sprit instead of this. But the first attempt at that had the same problem. It would rotate around one side of the mast or the other. Take this out of alignment. Not good. So I finally realized I need to rough in these kind of brackets that will position it on this PVC. And it's pretty crude, but it's held up for 12 years or so of sailing in a lot of different conditions. Sailing rowboat, you'll see in the build videos of some tweaking and adjusting to get the tension in various points of the sail. But I guess that's kind of the lesson I've come away with, is you're going to get pretty much what gravity coupled with the sideways force from the sail is going to give you. It's the weekend, cold, got the heaters going in here. We had a gap of about 3/32 on the lower side of this. I'm going to change the angle. So I'm going to record the current angle between this and the sprit, and then also record the distance here, because I'm thinking that may be a bigger reason for the binding than this angle. So the current angle is 62 degrees. So we can draw that. Take in some of the gap below, and at the same time opening gap would be half of that. So let's just say 1/16 of an inch across this. These guys are 4 inches. We mark out our 4 inches here. And we want to kick the bottom in a 1/16. What kind of angle change would that require? Yeah, just a little bit. Basically 61 degree, about a degree change, so not much. And the opening here, currently 1 1/4. Before I made a replacement set of sprits last year, and put these on. I think I had already made the correction on this aluminum bracket to adjust this angle. Yeah, and on the starboard side, same deal. Clean up some of the salty stuff. Over here, a little bit of a nylon bushing. That's just about 61 degrees. The acid test will be raising and lowering, but I think we have recovered that degree. I think the last thing I'll do, I do believe this bracket is squeezing it a little bit. So I'm going to just take a tiny bit of material off the inside lip of this guy. That's better. Main thing I want to do here is just take this apart, re-lube inside, and check through these cables. Probably lube them just a little bit, make sure everything's okay. Make sure these springs are all right. I thought about soldering these ends, because if you pull too hard and things are binding up, raising and lowering the rudder, that loop can open up. I want to resurface this, which is where it rubs on the aft cockpit combing. We got a little bit of a impact on the trailing edge. I'm not sure what to do about that. So I might just do spot epoxy over this, sanded epoxy it. Tiller is kept in with this pin, a roofing nail, whose galvanization is not entirely held up to salt water. The tension on these springs normally holds it in. This should come out. Set that aside and clean it up. Not too bad a shape. These cables go down through this tube on the forward end. We'll check this out and try to get it lubed up a little bit. And so once that was swaged on or whatever, this can't be completely disassembled. But I can take, what I want to do is take the pivot pin out, get some lubricant inside that hinge bit, and take a look at all these little blocks, make sure I can lube them up as best possible. Okay. Side of the pintle holds on that sleeve. Okay, so what should be is that sleeve. Drive that out of there. There. Okay. Not too bad. I'm going to see if I can solder on these spring ends a little bit. Just if I'm having to really tug at it out in the middle with all hell breaking loose. See if I can do something to keep it from less easily popping out. Not going to be ultra strong. Let's see if it helps. Alright, I think I'm not going to put another coat of urethane on these guys this year. They actually look pretty good. I'm going to grease the cabling. Put some lithium grease in there after hitting it with some linseed oil. Drag these guys back in. It's just about on there. This guy back on. Axle. And lock nuts. Feels pretty good. And I have to wait for the tiller, which I am going to check up on the joint here, the tiller extension. Mark was sailing it, and I think he leveraged, torqued a little bit, and it unscrewed out on Pamlico Sound. This was my repair out there. It was hard to get off. I almost let it go, but really would not be good when it comes loose. You can hardly sail without the extension, so let's take it apart and get a double locking nut coming out on the top side. Make it easier to refinish these pieces as well. Got a nylon sleeve all the way through there, which is perfect so that it tightens down on that, and then an extra outer sleeve, so that'll all stay. I just need a longer bolt and then a double locking nut. And if I'm gonna hit the boom with some spar varnish, which I probably should, I don't believe I have since I first finished the boat. This guy is a sliding sleeve for the reefing system, so I have to take this block off to get it off. I could definitely use a little love in there. Last day of January, and we got us a little snowstorm, maybe some cross-country skiing in a bit. Halyard block up here is pretty corroded, and my initial inclination is don't mess with it. It's never given me problems, but probably while I'm doing all this, makes sense to take that out and then see if we can get some urethane on. Come on, baby. There we go. Oh, shit. I didn't think that just that coat of varnish would cause that kind of problem. Just great. More epoxy work. Maybe I can just clean it up and put it back in. This guy's stainless. All in all, I would say wasn't worth taking it out, but now at least I know. Probably get a new nut bolt. Live and learn. It'll have to do. Certainly won't be structural way up there, but it's irritating nonetheless. The hardest part of the rest of this is just figuring out how to get all this stuff hung, especially the mast down in here, and to where I can watch it in case I'm getting the coverage on too light or too heavy. Maximally inconvenient. No bad curtains. I would say, if anything, I'm a little light on places on the mast, being conservative about getting too much on there, getting some drips. And can I say, to be honest, I hate putting on urethane because I'm happy with the results something like 10% of the time. And I know I've read all about different techniques and thinners and humidity and temperature. Lately, I believe I've decided temperature is a bigger deal than I thought it was. Getting the shop temps up to, say, 60 just has not resulted in some good finishes, and I thought there was something wrong with the urethane and did some experiments. I now believe it correlates with temps, so that's why I'm in here. We'll see what happens. There's snow coming down. I got the spars tiller dagger board out of the basement, and we'll go put the hardware back on. And I'd say this is in the good enough zone. I'm glad I did it. It really needed some attention after 12 years or so sailing, including some salt water. The masthead repair is okay. And tiller extension, it's in pretty decent shape. Definitely needed some attention as well. So all in all, in the good enough zone. We'll put some hardware back on. This is the old axle for the masthead block. I cleaned the rust off of the block itself a little bit. I think I'm just going to put it back in. And this is the old bolt for holding the tiller extension to the tiller. It's a little too short to get a double nut on it. So here's the new one. And it looks like I can use the old bolt for the new axle for the masthead. Two-way locking system this time. And I guess we can start a new nail. And what keeps it, or has proven so far to keep it in place, is that this system is under tension with the two sets of springs. So let's bring it to the up position. And the last piece is this padding that needs to go on there. I'm wondering about just covering the old one with a new one and increasing the padding just a little bit. Let's go ahead and give that a try. With a little luck, that's good to go for a while. Yeah, this guy definitely needed some attention. I have not done a coat since launch, I think, on the boom. And the tail end spent quite a bit of time in the water. Before bending the sail back on to the boom, last thing is the masthead block. So what we want to do here is use this lashing to basically hold this like that. So let it kind of hang in the air just enough. And this should also, since it's hooked under the grommet for the aft main sheet block, put me back at the same amount of slack for the foot, in theory. Well, in theory, that should be it. Certainly before we get on the road to the Keys and get that boat out in the grass or snow or whatever's sitting out there and make sure there's no major mistake. But the acid test on all this, with a little luck, will go well down in the Florida Panhandle, then into Estero Bay, and then finally down into the Keys.
You've been taken by the wind. I'm no closer side. Doors that would not let you in. Outcast and a stranger.